Welcome to the Data Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. We have the session here every Friday, apparently, to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about data vaults, data-driven applications, MVP clusters, if you want, cloud computing, and so on, data mining, all these topics which are quite interesting for us, or for me especially. If you have any questions, you can just use the chat client here, or the chat in the client here. Use the Q&A function in the client to raise your question. You can raise your hand. I would give you voice. Don't misuse that. And I show you a link for a form where you can also type in your questions essentially after the session or in between the sessions. And that gives me some time to prepare the slides essentially. Well, I just print your question typically on the slide, so it's not a big deal. If you receive multiple questions, I would be cherry picking. I might follow up with you, and I just did with a couple of guys here. Follow up with you guys on some of your questions to just get some more information. And yeah, good question is a question where I can answer it within 10 minutes or something, 10, 15 minutes roughly. If there will be no question at all, I'll talk about the cluster. We still have some questions, but keep shooting them because we're starting to run low and I have no progress made on the cluster here, so that's the problem. So this question is, why do we need to have a data warehouse or data vault in our business model? And it comes from a customer where they were, let's say, at the beginning of the journey, a mid-sized firm, they needed to convince of having a data warehouse essentially. Well, the team knew it needs one, but the decision maker wasn't sure about that. Do we really need a data warehouse? So what was my answer? First of all, this organization was, I would say, characterized by the fact that many managers, many decision makers were making decisions, but more on a gut feeling base, right? So they didn't have a full answer. They couldn't make a rational answer or decision about the business. That's number one. And so the biggest challenge or the biggest the driver for having a data warehouse is really to turn this organization, this ad hoc organization or organization where managers have to make decisions based on gut feeling where they don't really know about the facts, to turn this into a more data-driven organization. That's the key, essentially, in my opinion. That depends a bit on the management if they want that, right? Because gut feeling is also based on experience, in all honesty, right? So it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that the risk for failure is much higher, and the bigger the organization gets, the more information you need, and you don't have as a human, you can't have this let's say this oversight of your organization anymore. Sooner or later, you lose context, you lose the insights into all these dependencies and so on, right? And that's where a more systematic approach comes into play. That's where we have to organize data, analyze data, and process data essentially, and prepare this data-driven decision essentially. So that was more or less my answer for this. There might be other reasons, right? So what about the next step? What if you so once you have the data, you can also start automating your business processes, for example, much better, because this data becomes available for all these let's say, yeah, these automated business processes to perform lookups, for example, to get or gather more knowledge, more data from the system to make better automated decisions as well. That's another one. There's often the question, who should get access to this data? Isn't this, let's say, highly confidential or something? Yes, it is confidential enterprise data. But then in my opinion, if you turn the organization into a data-driven organization with the help, not solely, but with the help of the data warehouse, who should get access to the data? And in my opinion, it should be every employee, because think about this: you're hiring an employee so they can make decisions, right? If you expect an employee just to do some work, you should have automated this job. You don't need to hire somebody just to clean up something or whatever, right? The thing is, even if you ask somebody to clean out the paper bins, for example, go to the office, clean the paper bins. Well, they have to check the paper bins, make a decision if it's full or not, and empty them, right? So there's a decision-making process. What about identifying the best time when you send them out to clean the paper bins, for example, right? So find a better point in time, or the number of people you need to clean up the paper bins and so on. How many people do we have and so on. So every human that you hire as an employee should make decisions one way or the other. And if they should make decisions, we essentially in a data-driven organization, they should make these decisions not based on a gut feeling. They should make these decisions based on they should make a rational decision based on actual data, actual facts. That's my opinion. So the data warehouse should be available to every employee, more or less. There might be some exceptions, yes, but they should be available to every employee, which means that we have to secure the data warehouse, right? It must be secured on a role level basis, because I also believe that not every employee should have access to all the data. I fully agree with that. But the data they need to make their decisions, that's what they should essentially get from the system, essentially. So it's a very deep integration into the organization, make it available to everybody, limit the usage to everybody. Even a manager, let's say a CEO, no one can tell me the CEO needs to know all the data or needs to see all the data. I don't get access. I'm the CEO at Scalefree. I don't get access to all the data because I don't need that. I don't need all the details for, let's say, an employee record or something. I have some basic information, but the rest is at HR, for example, right? So it's not my business. And much more data, so which I don't really need and don't need to see. And if I need that, yeah, I can justify it and get access. That's not a point. But I don't need to see all data, right? So it really depends on the role. But yeah, having said that, every employee should have access to the data warehouse. It should really be a deep rollout, in my opinion. And then it becomes the basis for the decision-making process, for the data-driven decision-making. That's, I would say, it's the need. Now, do they need this? In my opinion, sooner or later, yes. Sooner or later, as they grow, yes. The question is, when comes the point when they realize they need essentially a data-driven solution? That's the question, essentially, right? So you might be a bit too early for this, for a positive answer from the management, from the decision maker, or you're too late sometimes as well, right? In my opinion, they were too late already, because they were essentially the way they performed the sales, for example, was really very much driven by the skills or by the gut feeling of the salespeople, even though it's a lot of this data that they needed or decision that they had to make on should have been based on facts. That's another story. So yeah, so my answer here is really based on data-driven applications, data-driven organizations. That's the key driver. And then Data Vault, let's answer this one as well. Do we need Data Vault or should we use something else? Well, I'm in this Data Vault business, so in my opinion, you need a Data Vault. That's number one. But here's the honest answer. Data Vault, if you need a Data Vault model, depends really on the requirements. You might get away without the Data Vault if your requirements are relatively low. But as soon as you have, let's say, integration requirements, you have multiple source systems, you want to integrate them to an integrated enterprise data model. You have security requirements, privacy requirements where you have to delete data from, let's say, person records or patient records or some other records. When you also need auditability, for example, those aspects. When you need to integrate real-time feeds at the same time with batch feeds, for example, and so on. There might be some alternatives. Don't get me wrong. There might be some alternatives for individual requirements. But the cool thing with Data Vault is it combines all these different, it provides a combined solution that captures all these different requirements at once. And that's what I like about it. So to build an enterprise model where we have, at enterprise clients, where we have a lot of these requirements, security, privacy, integration, auditability, real-time processing, and so on, with all these requirements at once, it's a great solution. If you don't have these requirements, you might use something else. But then my personal belief is, and also from my experience of wise, that your requirements will increase over time. And your solution might work for now, and let's say support role level security, fine. But then what about adding privacy later, and when you have to delete personal data later? Not a requirement today, but maybe tomorrow. And that's the driver for Data Vault in that sense. So solutions are built to some extent, they work to some extent, and then comes the next requirement that you didn't foresee essentially, because yeah, requirements will increase. That's what it is. And that was my bet when I first learned Data Vault. It's not just about the volume that will increase, the data volume and the data shape that comes with it, but also the requirements, how we process the data will also increase, either by the lawmaker, by industry bodies, by the management, and so on. They have more and more requirements how we process the data. And that's increasing. You can't stop that. You might get away today with it, with your current solution, but it will increase, and then you have to rebuild, redesign the current solution essentially. And the cool thing of Data Vault is once you build a data vault, you can adapt it to the future, essentially, step by step. That's a cool thing. We can add more requirements, more features for the new requirements along the way, essentially. Let's see, at least in a well-designed solution, let's say that. And that's where it comes in the value of data vault. So it depends on the requirements. And again, you might get away with it if you don't have all these requirements for an enterprise solution. But I bet you will get them sooner or later. And that's really driving people to the data vault sooner or later. Okay, cool. So very short question here. So that's all I could get out of it. Yeah, thanks for joining. If you have a question like this, 1 second. Use this link here, sfr.de/dvfriday. That's where you find a form where you can also submit your questions, essentially, and I'll check them out and pick them up for week by week, essentially, to be presented here. And there's 2 more webinars at Scalefree, not by me, but by the experts for the tools here. At scalefree.to/webinars, you'll find webinars for Warescape and for DBT. Again, by tool experts at Scalefree. I'm not a tool expert in all honesty. And if you can't wait until next Friday, check out the Data Innovators Exchange. That's a community-style forum or forum-style community. That's the other way around. A forum-style community where you can ask your questions, and there's a little competition going on between Ignition Data and Scalefree consultants to answer your question as quick as possible. Yeah, it's a long story to get something out of it. And yeah, so if you can't wait until next Friday, join here and ask a question there. And yeah, I'll see you hopefully in addition on next Friday, hopefully as well. Enjoy your weekend and see you next Friday, guys. Thank you, guys.